The U.S. relationship with India will be defining for both countries in how we are sort of placing ourselves in the 21st century world order. It is essential to sustain U.S. leadership in all the sectors that will shape the future: defense, climate, energy, AI, space, and emerging technologies. Working with India through the Quad helps maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific and enhances the regional influence of the United States and our partners. The strategic convergence between U.S. and India at a time of heightened international competition is enduring, but it certainly cannot be taken for granted. Successive presidential administrations of both political parties have devoted years of painstaking work to build trust and deepen cooperation between our two countries. When Trump took office at the beginning of this year, the Biden administration handed him a bilateral relationship at the height of its strength: a revitalized Quad, a budding defense tech partnership, and a trusted supply chain partner. These were hard-earned accomplishments and the product of strategic discipline from our two countries. And then what happened? Flush, flush, flush down the toilet the capital that Americans have built over decades in service of Trump's personal grievances and at the expense of our national interests. And unless he changes course, Trump will be the American president that lost India, or more accurately, that chased India away, while revitalizing the Russian Empire, while breaking up the transatlantic alliance, and menacing Latin America. That is not a legacy any president should be excited about having. When the history books are written about where Trump's antagonism towards India began, they will point to something that has nothing to do with our long-term strategic interests: his personal obsession with a Nobel Peace Prize. While that is laughable, the harm that it will cause is not. Singling out India for 50% tariffs, one of the highest rates imposed on any country, has effectively derailed leader-level meetings between our two countries. Yet the 25% tariff rate that has attributed to India's imports of Russian oil look pretty pointless when Steve Witkoff is striking backroom deals with Putin advisors to sell out Ukraine in exchange for some business investment. There have been real strategic costs to this protracted trade negotiation. The annual Quad Leaders Summit, one of the most important unity-projecting platforms for the U.S. and our Indo-Pacific partners, has been indefinitely postponed. This has sent a dangerous signal to our allies and the PRC about the U.S. withdrawal from our most pressing interests on the world stage. And beyond tariffs, Trump has also attacked the people-to-people ties between the U.S. and India. The $100,000 fee on H-1B visas, 70% of which are held by Indians, is a rebuke of the incredible contributions Indians have made to science, technology, medicine, and arts in the United States. Trump's policies towards India can only be described as cutting our nose to spite our face. And this is doing real and lasting damage to the strategic trust and mutual understanding between our two countries. Because let me be clear, being a coercive partner has a cost. And this poster is worth 1,000 words. You do not get a Nobel Peace Prize by driving U.S. strategic partners into the arms of our adversaries. We must move with incredible urgency to mitigate the damage that this administration has done to the U.S.-India partnership and return to the cooperation that is essential to U.S. prosperity, security, and global leadership. Congress understands the stake of this relationship on a bipartisan basis, and I thank the chair for providing the opportunity to get that on the record today. I look forward to a robust discussion, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair reminds other members of the committee that an opening statements that they may have may be submitted for the record. We're pleased to have a distinguished panel of witnesses before us today on this important topic. First, we have Mr. Jeff Smith, the Director of Asian Studies, the Director of Asian Studies Center at the Heritage Foundation. We have Mr. Dhruva Jaishankar, the Executive Director at Observer Research Foundation America. Thank you, sir. And Samir Lawani. Samir Lawani is the Advisor of Special Competitive Studies Project and Senior Fellow at the Indo-Pacific Program at the German Marshall Fund of the United States and the Research Affiliate at MIT Security Studies Program. I would hate to see your business card, sir. So at this point, I am going to give myself 5 minutes or I'm sorry, we're going to be, sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. We are going to have each of our witnesses give us their opening statements. Certainly I understand the issues that are important here before us, and we're very appreciative of your time, especially as we had fairly significant delay while we were waiting for things to get resolved on the House floor. Your full statements will be made part of the record, and I'll ask you to keep your spoken remarks to 5 minutes in order to allow us some time for member questions. So with that, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Smith. You are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the ranking member for having me today. I have been a vocal advocate for the India-U.S. relationship for nearly 20 years. So it has been a bit difficult for me to see the two sides hit choppy waters this year. Let me start out by saying I think the strategic partnership has been an unmitigated success for the United States. And in fact, I think it has been a rare success in a sea of foreign policy mistakes since the turn of the century. This is one of the few bipartisan successes that I think we'll be able to point to in the history books. My written testimony explains India's growing importance geopolitically and to the United States in greater detail. I will just briefly relay some of the greatest hits. We are, of course, talking about the world's largest democracy. We are talking about now the most populous country in the world. We are talking about a country that has nuclear weapons, aircraft carriers, a space program, and nuclear submarines. So it is in many ways at the top of the geopolitical pecking order. It is the fastest growing large power. It is a top 5 economy and a top 5 military today, and very soon it will be a top 3 economy and top 3 military. In other words, very soon China, India, and the U.S. will be in a class of their own, and where India is positioned between China and the U.S. matters a great deal. This has been a low-cost, high-benefit partnership for the United States, and the dividend from that investment has brought us material benefits. Now, over $30 billion in U.S. arms sales to India, over $200 billion in annual trade, over $40 billion in Indian investments in the U.S., supporting over 420,000 jobs. India is now buying $15 billion worth of American energy, and that number is likely to go up to $25 billion in the near future. We are doing joint patrols in the South China Sea. We are training for mountain warfare in the Himalayas. We are tracking Chinese submarines together in the Indian Ocean. We are refueling each other's warships at sea, resupplying each other's militaries, and India has granted us access to strategically located military bases, which is of utility to the United States. I want to talk briefly about what happened this year. Expectations started very high for the second Trump administration, in part because the first Trump administration went very well. In fact, it was arguably the best 4-year stretch in the contemporary relationship, including the reviving of the Quad Group, a boost in arms sales, a more formal relationship between India and CENTCOM, and a suspension of aid to Pakistan, among other things. So we entered Trump 2, I think, with high expectations and a visit by Prime Minister Modi in February that went relatively well, but we unfortunately had a few hang-ups. First, we were unable to reach a trade deal, which resulted in 25% Liberation Day tariffs on India. Second, the Trump administration imposed 25% tariffs on India for purchases of Russian oil, a form of sanction in order to persuade India to stop buying Russian oil. But between those two events, something frankly even worse happened. That was not a major event in the U.S. press, but it certainly was in India. Gunmen from a well-known Pakistani terrorist group snuck into Kashmir and went to a honeymoon mountain retreat and started shooting young couples dead in broad daylight. That prompted a response from India, including strikes on terrorist training camps, and an eventual exchange between the Indian and Pakistani militaries to include missiles, artillery, and drones. Pakistan made frantic calls to Washington, and the Trump administration ultimately intervened and helped to create a ceasefire between the two countries, which was an unmitigated good thing. However, I believe our administration's messaging on that conflict and the ceasefire put Prime Minister Modi in a difficult position at home. All of a sudden, he was not claiming victory against India's arch nemesis, but his critics portrayed him as bending to the will of the U.S. and being subservient. And I think that made it difficult for Prime Minister Modi to message appropriately on this. And I think both sides could have done a better job handling that ceasefire announcement. I have a lot more to say on the China-India relationship, on the India-Russia relationship, but I would just say it would be strategic malpractice of the highest order to discard the quarter-century dividend of trust and partnership we have built with India, and I'm confident we can get the relationship back on a positive footing moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I now recognize Mr. Jaishankar for an opening statement. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Huizenga, Ranking Member Kamala-Gurdov, and members of the subcommittee, I'm grateful for the invitation to appear before you today. I appear in my personal capacity as an Indian citizen, and my testimony reflects only my own views as an analyst of international relations. The U.S.-India partnership has strengthened considerably since 1998. From severe U.S. sanctions following India's nuclear tests, we've come a long way. Congress was instrumental in enabling the lifting of those sanctions under Bill Clinton and in passing legislation in 2006 to enable civilian nuclear commerce with India under George W. Bush. Congress has also supported the major defense partnership under President Obama and the resurrection of the Quad under Presidents Trump and Biden. In India, 3 successive prime ministers over the past 27 years have invested in a closer partnership with the United States. Today, that strategic partnership is very significant. The two countries have signed a series of agreements on military logistics, supply, and information sharing. All 3 military services have done military exercises this year. U.S. sales of defense equipment to India have also grown, and India now operates 10 major U.S. defense platforms. So why have 5 U.S. presidents and 3 Indian prime ministers invested in this relationship over 27 years? The first major impetus for better relations has been economic opportunities for both countries. The figure of $212 billion in goods and services trade arguably understates the importance of the economic relationship for both countries. Taken together, Indian investors, importers, entrepreneurs, students, AI researchers, doctors, and tourists contribute conservatively over $200 billion to the U.S. economy and are responsible for at least 830,000 American jobs in every one of the 50 states and territories. The second rationale for closer ties has been strategic, related to China's rise in assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific. In recent years, China has expanded and modernized its nuclear arsenal, undertaken one of the largest naval buildups in its history, and unveiled new unmanned and cyber systems. In 2020, a major mobilization by the PLA resulted in clashes in which 20 Indian military personnel lost their lives. China has also developed a network of potentially dual-use ports across the Indo-Pacific and beyond that might be used to secure critical choke points. The Indian Navy, as a result, has stepped up, increased the tempo of its patrols, and contributed to maritime burden sharing in the Indian Ocean and Pacific. Both the United States and India also have enormous trade deficits with China, $296 billion in the case of the United States, $99 billion in the case of India. And China's rare earth export restrictions have reinforced concerns about supply chain concentration as leverage with competitors. Another area of strategic convergence between the United States and India has involved stabilizing the Middle East. The Abraham Accords, brokered by the first Trump administration, enabled an economic dialogue involving India, Israel, the UAE, and the United States. And more ambitiously, India and the US have plans for an India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor. However, this considerable progress in consolidating the relationship is now at a political standstill. The biggest obstacle concerns tariffs. President Trump's desire to balance trade with India and access India's market is precisely what India is offering. India has signed 5 trade agreements in recent years and is actively negotiating at least 5 more. A solution to trade and tariff differences between the United States and India is therefore at hand. The second challenge in India relates to the United States' renewed engagement with Pakistan's military leadership. Pakistan has a long and well-documented history of using non-state terrorist proxies against India. As a result over many years, India's experience is that third-party mediation has often contributed to Pakistan's adventurism. And so the United States has pursued a policy of dehyphenation between India and Pakistan, engaging with both, but minimizing involvement in their disputes. There remains considerable progress for future collaboration should differences over trade and Pakistan be successfully managed between the United States and India. The outline of what is possible was spelled out by President Trump and Prime Minister Modi in February. This includes $500 billion in trade by 2030, which will be facilitated by a bilateral trade agreement. The United States is now a major provider of oil and gas to India, and coal exports have also increased, and civil nuclear cooperation is possible, as is cooperation on defense, on AI, and a variety of other emerging technologies. There's also the possibility of cooperation on the Quad and in the Middle East. The written testimony that I've submitted contains significantly more detail concerning the value of the US-India commercial partnership, India's challenges with China and Pakistan, the ongoing trade negotiations, the India-Russia relationship, and the considerable potential for US-India collaboration on trade, defense, technology, and energy.